it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Reverend Candace Sparrow-Powers. So glad to see you. Reverend Candace leads a full life and expresses in so many ways that I am going to read here a little bit about the bio that was on the fellowship webpage to give you a nice background on who Candace is. Reverend Candace Sparrow-Powers, ordained at the Fellowship Center in 2024, serves her family as a wife and co-parent and the community as an interfaith chaplain. She examines social issues at their roots, and she is committed to sparking positive changes in how religious organizations approach intersectionality. A creative artist who enjoys exploring various mediums, she has over 20 years of experience in spiritual musicianship. She has been dedicated to volunteering with her religious and community organizations since childhood to help people in need. Candace has served this fellowship by volunteering on the board of directors, pastoral council, and worship ministry. Deeply aligned with Christ's teachings and consciousness, she greatly values acts of service, compassionate relations, and humanitarian efforts. Because spiritual expression takes many forms, she honors individual beliefs and values. Compassionate and non-judgmental approaches foster trust and grace. In consideration of mental health advocacy, she focuses on neurodiversity awareness and holistic practices for trauma recovery. Her hobbies include learning, creating, and the Virgonian act of organization. All life is a gift to us. The human experience in its entirety is divinely designed to reunite, bring harmony, and inner peace. We need only to accept love and that God's creations are worth understanding. The topic of Candace's talk today is bridging the divine with compassion. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Candace.
Oh, yeah, sure. That works. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning again. I wrote that twice. And I'm grateful to be here with everyone. And as we gather this morning, we're going to declare that this is sacred time, sacred space. And I invite you all to take a moment and center ourselves and open our hearts to prepare for the message today. And I have a short prayer for grounding. Spirit, please fill this place with your light so that we may express compassion and grace in all we do. May our actions be aligned with your goodness, always and in all ways. For it is in thy name that we pray. Amen. I brought cheat sheets and pens, so if you want to take notes, you may. Pastor Sarah's passing those out now. Is this echoing a little bit? Okay. Okay, thank you. So also my email is on the bottom if you have any questions or need any works cited that I've quoted today. We can get those to you. So in my last talk, I explored the wisdom of the Four Agreements. Has anyone heard of the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz? Very good. And I spoke about how to apply these principles. They helped me find a lot of peace in life. And it's peace in understanding others, understanding myself, and The agreements teach us to do our best in being impeccable with our word, not taking things personally, and avoiding to make assumptions, doing our best in all of these things. So through this, I've learned that peace and understanding are both vital ingredients in developing compassion. And this is the kind of compassion that bridges the divides that we have between us. And that's the title of my talk, Bridging the Divide with Compassion. So what if, instead of focusing on what divides us, we took time to explore what we share, what we have in common? The world's religions, for example, they hold immense wisdom. And within them lies core truths that connect us all. But this process of bridging divides is not an instant fix. It's a journey. It takes patience, it takes grace, and it takes a willingness to understand each other. In the same way the four agreements call for self-awareness and compassion, the story of creation in Genesis, it also teaches us that growth is a process. God didn't create the world in just a single moment. Each day of creation had its own purpose, and God allowed time for each stage of growth. So bridging the divides between us takes time. Patience is essential, just like the story of creation. Each step of the journey is a vital part of the process. And God allowed time for each stage of growth. So compassion is the foundation that allows this growth to happen. While recognizing the common threads that connect us, it is first a crucial step to acknowledge the realities of the divides that we face. Understanding the roots, the bases of these divisions, whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual, allows us to begin the process of healing ourselves, within ourselves, and our relationships. So let's explore what truly lies at the heart of our separation. As we seek to bridge the divide, it's essential to take a holistic approach. This means recognizing that differences exist on every single level: our bodies, our minds, our souls. Each individual has a completely different makeup. We have spectrums and we have octaves. And these differences, rather than dividing us, they serve a distinct purpose. And this is part of God's magnificent design, that we're all made differently. But in today's world, we often struggle to embrace these differences, whether it's our differences in our physical needs, our mental capabilities, our spiritual journeys. We allow these variations to create barriers. This failure to accept diversity of the human existence and the human experience leads us to a disconnection. It leads us to suffering. And we separate ourselves from the collective whole. And that's something that we're meant to honor. So our divisions are not only internal or just personal, but our environment plays a part in that. Our indoctrination, our cultural backgrounds, each plays a significant role in shaping us and the ways that we view other people. So instead of seeing these as opportunities of growth, we often allow them to deepen the divide, create further separation. For example, consider how civil unrest, we have wars, they all demonstrate the devastating consequences of a lack of compassion. And these conflicts arise when we cannot or will not see the humanity in others. We won't acknowledge their right to live and thrive differently. This refusal to accept and honor differences can escalate into violence and fear, and this reinforces a destructive cycle. We have environmental disruptions, and these provide a stark reminder that we are not separate from the world around us. The planet itself is suffering from our lack of care, our lack of foresight. And this reflects the collective pain that we are experiencing, and this is from a failure again to act with compassion. So as whether through the climate change, destruction of ecosystems, we are witnessing how our collective failure to embrace the mindset of unity and stewardship leads to suffering. And this is on a massive scale. Everybody feels it. We feel it. According to universal law, we are interconnected. What impacts one of us impacts all of us. Civil unrest, wars, environmental crises, they're not isolated events. They are reflections of how deeply divided we are and how urgently we need to bridge that divide. So, how do we use compassion for a bridge? And before we use it, we must understand what it means. Everyone has perhaps a different meaning of compassion. I'm going to give you what mine is, but it goes beyond sympathy. It goes beyond empathy. It's the active recognition of another's suffering. And then that is accompanied by the desire to alleviate their suffering. That's where the compassion comes in, is the act of alleviating. It's not passive. It calls us to act with love and understanding. And at its core, compassion is about recognizing our shared humanity and the interconnectedness of all people. It's the first step towards bridging divides because it encourages us to see others not as adversaries, but as fellow human beings, all deserving of dignity and care. And in understanding why compassion is so crucial in healing societal divisions, we must consider the universal laws. And these are akin to the laws of gravity and motion. Universal laws affect us. They're in motion, they're happening despite whether or not we believe in them or not. So even though a person may not have the word gravity in their language, they know it hurts when you fall. Gravity is going to be there. The law of cause and effect, and that teaches us that we have consequences. Everything we do has consequences. What we put into the world comes back to us. This is karma in the Dharmic religions, or a man reaps what he sows, that's in Galatians. It's not just man, human, all people, all of us. The law of attraction, like attracts like. The negativity, division, and conflict we're seeing in the world is not random. They are the direct results of how we've handled our relationships over time, since we got here. And the chaos is a reflection of the energy we put into society. Fear, hatred, exclusion will only breed more of the same. So in order to change the course of our future, we must take action in ways that set love and positive growth as goals. And that begins with compassion. When we approach others with the intention of fostering understanding, we disrupt the cycle of negativity. We break the chains that hinder love. And we began to attract and manifest our desires, our love, unity, joyful relations, abundance, healing. Compassion gives us the ability to shift the energy we put into the world. It creates a ripple effect that can transform not only our personal lives, but also the societal structures that we have on a broader level, and those things that perpetrate division. If we want a different outcome, we must plant the seeds of love in every interaction that we have. And that cultivates growth, compassionate action. And while this does offer us a bridge, it's often blocked by walls that we've built. We build these walls inside that manifest in our world between nations. We built those walls through polarized thinking. If we want a different outcome, we have to change our thinking, right? So I want to recognize some of the barriers that polarized perspectives create. And that's when we allow black and white, right and wrong, we allow that to dictate our interactions with each other. We lose sight of the humanity in other people because we're focused on right, wrong, just black and white, right? So compassion requires us to break through rigid divisions, rigid structures that we set up, and we open our hearts and minds to different experiences, different ideas. So how do we dismantle these polarities, and why are they so dangerous? Polarized thinking, it simplifies the individual's view of the world into rigid, black and white categories. It's us versus them dynamics. And those perpetuate division. But life, the human experience, is far more complex than that. We have octaves, we have spectrums. We are vast. And that's why the concept of intersectionality becomes crucial. And that reminds us that people hold multiple identities simultaneously, whether it be our race, our gender, our age, education, where we live, our religion, our nationality. That's just a few. And these identities interact with each other in a way that they can create tension. They can also foster understanding. When we ignore this complexity, we risk reinforcing the stereotypes and deepening the divisions that we have. And that increases our suffering as a collective. So let's consider how this can help us to understand. We can understand our cultural conflicts, like those faced by the indigenous people. The persecution of First Nations and tribes by the settling colonies wasn't just about land and resources. It was about racial and religious identities colliding in harmful ways. When dismissing these experiences or experiences of others as invalid, that's our history. Those are our ancestors. We have missed many opportunities in this case to learn from our past. But by recognizing the intersection of these identities, we can better comprehend our pain, others' pain. We can understand why there is mistrust and the division that still exists today. It shows us that polarization just isn't a matter of opposing viewpoints. It's about the way in which multiple forms of identities overlap and create distinct experiences of suffering. When we acknowledge this, we begin to move beyond polarized thinking. We can approach others with a deeper sense of empathy. And we can recognize the multifaceted nature of their experiences and identities, and our own. And the shift allows us to build more inclusive and compassionate communities that honor the complexity of each individual experience. So, the good news, we are not bound by polarized thinking. This is a free country, right? You free? All right, great. The divisions can seem very vast, but they can be bridged. And the answer lies in compassion. It's not just an ideal, a lofty ideal. It is a powerful, transformative practice that can resolve the divides we all have. And it's the bridge that allows us to move from conflict to connection, from hurt to healing. And the best part is we all have the ability to practice compassion right now. The ultimate example of compassion and practice was the life of Jesus Christ. And this is for me in my life. I believe he showed us through his acts of service, not just lip service. He fed the hungry, he healed the sick, he cast out dark forces, and he loved those who were marginalized unconditionally, without question. There was no prereq. And his actions were not only expressions of divine love, but also a reminder that charitable works and service are keys to enriching our relationships with others. So when we extend kindness through tangible actions, things we can put our hands on and we can do the things, we create meaningful connections, and it helps to uplift people around us. The law of the opposite, or the law of attraction, states the opposite, you attract the opposite. Like attracts like. If you do the opposite, you'll attract the opposite, which is like, it makes sense. Okay. Stick to the notes. Another practice of transforming life lessons into wisdom is called spiritual alchemy. And that gives us a deeper understanding of how to live with consideration for the collective consciousness that we all share. And this means that we learn from our experiences, the joyful and the painful experiences. We sit with the uncomfortable times. We have change we can't control. As a Virgo, I've got to sit with that a lot. We use that wisdom to approach life with compassion, mindfulness, and an awareness. It brings awareness of our connections again. And as I grew spiritually, I began to realize that my thoughts, my words, my actions, they shape and influence not just my own life, but the people around me, my friends, my family, my community. And this is where integrity comes in. That's an essential thing, because it ensures that what we contribute to the world is for the greater good of everyone. And the Reiki principles will be an example of this. And that reminds us that our spiritual work must be rooted in integrity. Everything we do, whether it's our personal lives, our endeavors, professional endeavors, spiritual practices, we are called to act with honesty, kindness, care, ethical fairness. And these principles guide us toward a life of balance, harmony, and they urge us to be mindful. We have to be mindful of how our actions impact other people, like the ripple effect. And they're not just limited, these values aren't limited to just spiritual work. They have universal relevance. A holistic approach to life teaches us that we have to act with integrity in all areas. And then we create an environment around us of trust and respect and growth. So how do we apply compassion and integrity in our everyday lives, in our daily lives? We can start by active listening. Heard of active listening? Show of hands. Oh yeah, it's good. It's a great tool to use at home, everywhere you are. It gives us and others the opportunity to express, and we meet them without judgment. That's the teaching of that. We offer our kindness without expecting anything in return, without expecting recognition. Even it's small gestures in your relationships and your daily life. We have to take responsibility for our actions, acknowledge when we cause harm, and work to make amends. This requires emotional maturity. It requires accountability. But we can do this. We're free. These are just practical ways. And the Reiki principle, spiritual alchemy, and the example of Jesus, by living with integrity and compassion, we can contribute to the healing of ourselves, our communities, and ultimately the world. One of the most powerful ways we can bridge divides is by recognizing the commonalities across our faith-based traditions. And while religions may differ in doctrine, rituals, and symbols, many share the core value that foster unity, love, compassion, forgiveness, and service, acts of service to others. These shared principles remind us that at their heart, most faiths encourage us to live in harmony and work toward the collective good, whether it's the golden rule, love thy neighbor, or the emphasis on charity in Islam, or the call for peace and understanding for the Dharmic religions, like Buddhism and Hinduism, and Sikhism. These teachings guide us towards the same fundamental goal, which is unity and compassion for all humans, all of humanity, all living things. However, before we can reconstruct more harmonious relationships between faiths and among ourselves, we must first take a step back and deconstruct. We need to examine our individual relationships with religion and understand the ways in which we've internalized biases, beliefs, forms of separation. And this is a process of self-reflection. Deconstruction is necessary because it identifies the barriers within ourselves that prevent us from embracing more compassionate views of others. And by breaking down old patterns of thought, behavior, rituals, we create space for new opportunities, new growth, deeper growth, and a more unified understanding of faith. And this is how we move from division to connectiveness, and how we can foster a world where the differences in our faith and traditions are not seen as barriers. They're beautiful expressions of the diverse humanity and are seeking meaning and truth. And as we conclude, I invite you to reflect on this question. How would the world look if we each committed to living with greater compassion? Think about how your actions, thoughts, and words can influence the world around you. Starting from within, each of us has the ability to not only develop great compassion, but wield it. It's not just a passive feeling, it's an active force for healing and unity. Compassion is a choice we make every day, and it begins with the way we treat ourselves and extends outward to our relationships with others. So rather than continuing the battles of the past, fighting the fight of our forefathers, the battles of our ancestors and our generations, battles that no longer serve humanity's greater good, what if we chose to work in harmony with the natural flow of God's magnificent design? When we align ourselves with that flow, we stop resisting because it's meant to be. We stop working against nature, against each other, and against ourselves. And it is through this alignment, through the cultivation of compassion, that we begin to heal the wounds that have divided us for too long. Thank you.